Welcome to Starbound. My name is I Am Duck, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspy Academy and Freyrin and Rimaki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. The first rule of interstellar warfare, according to the Zavanti Dominion's updated combat manual, was simple. If you see a human holding a medkit, run, because they are far more dangerous than the soldiers themselves. Unfortunately, Private Rick Solon hadn't read the updated manual. Meraxus Prime burnt like a cigarette butt in an ashtray. Slow, persistent, and filling the air with the kind of acrid smoke that made you question your life choices. Through the haze of vaporized concrete and ionized plasma, Sergeant Vivian Stitch Malloy crawled toward the screaming. "Hold your guts in, Morrison," she barked, sliding through rubble that used to be someone's apartment complex. Her medkit, a Frankenstein assemblage of human tech. Stolen Zavanti biogel and what appeared to be duct tape bounced against her hip. "I swear to whatever god you pray to, if you die before I get there, I'll revive you just to kill you myself." Morrison, bless his stubborn heart, was trying to stuff his intestines back where they belonged, with one hand, while firing his rifle with the other. The plasma burn had opened him up like a zipper, but he was still conscious enough to curse creatively between shots. Vivian reached him just as a Zavanti shock trooper rounded the corner. Without missing a beat, she yanked a syringe from her vest, one labeled, "Do not use except in case of apocalypse," and jammed it into Morrison's neck. "This is gonna hurt," she said. "More than having my guts out." "Oh," Morrison gasped. "Yeah, actually." The cocktail hit his system like a freight train made of angry wasps. Morrison's eyes rolled back, then snapped forward, pupils dilated to black pools. He screamed, not in pain, but in something far more disturbing. Joy. The Zavanti trooper, who'd been advancing with intimidating speed, stopped dead. Its four pupils contracted in what humans had learned to recognize as abject terror. Morrison stood up, intestines still partially external, rifle forgotten. He picked up a chunk of rebar. "Run!" Another Zavanti voice crackled over their comms. "Medic protocol! Medic protocol!" But it was too late. Morrison charged, trailing blood and viscera, laughing like he just heard the universe's best joke. The trooper's training said to stand ground. Its survival instinct said to flee. The instinct won, but not fast enough. Vivian was already cauterizing the wound with her field torch when Morrison came back, dragging the trooper's helmet as a trophy. "You said it would hurt," he accused, grinning through teeth stained pink with blood. "I lied," Vivian said, slapping a patch of synthetic skin over the burn. "It was supposed to hurt more. Your nervous system's more fried than I thought. Sit still while I reattach your small intestine to your large intestine, or vice versa. I can never remember which is which." "Duck, I can see sounds." "That's normal. It'll pass. Or you'll die. 50-50. Morrison laughed again, that unhinged cackle that had become the 77th Hellborn signature. Across the battlefield, Zavanti forces were already pulling back, their ordered retreat becoming something closer to a rout. Because they'd all heard it too, the sound of a human too stubborn to die properly. 300 meters away, Private Rick Solon of the Nassari 3rd Regiment watched the scene through his scope, all four of his pupils dilating in synchronized disbelief. "Target acquired," his squad mate Valk whispered. "Clean shot on the medic." "No," Rick said quickly. too quickly. Standing orders. We don't engage human medical personnel. Since when? Valk's facial bones, elegant ridges that served as natural armor, flexed in confusion. They're non-combatants. Easy targets. Rix wanted to laugh, or cry, or possibly vomit. He'd been part of the forward reconnaissance unit 2 weeks ago when they'd first encountered human combat medics. He'd watched one inject a soldier who'd lost both legs with something that made him crawl. Crawl 50 meters to beat an Asari officer to death with his own severed femur. Since Command realized they're not saving lives, Rick said quietly, they're creating weapons. Through his scope he watched the human medic, a woman with dark skin and darker humor, according to intercepted comms, finish her field surgery. Her patient stood, swayed, then picked up a plasma rifle in each hand. That's impossible, Valk breathed. His intestinal tract was external. The trauma alone should have, doesn't apply to humans. Rix cut him off. Pull back, now. But Valk was already lining up his shot. 1 less medic means 10 less berserkers. I'm taking it. The plasma bolt flew true. A perfect headshot trajectory. The medic was looking down, checking her supplies. She couldn't possibly... She moved. Not ducked, not dodged. Just tilted her head slightly left. Like she was listening to music only she could hear. The bolt seared past, close enough to singe her hair. "Sniper!" Morrison roared, and his voice carried across the battlefield with pharmaceutical-enhanced volume. "Duck, you okay?" "Peachy," Vivian called back, already moving. "Someone's about to learn why we don't shoot the medic." Rix grabbed Valk's armor, trying to pull him back, but it was too late. Morrison was moving, sprinting, toward their position, carrying approximately 3 times his body weight in weapons, and still leaking fluids. "Run," Rick said. "But run!" They ran. Behind them, Morrison's laughter echoed off the ruins, punctuated by the sound of plasma fire and what might have been singing. General Thes Valkor stood in the antiseptic calm of the Zavanti command center, watching the helmet footage for the 4th time, his double-jointed arms moving in agitation, a nervous tic he'd developed since the humans entered the war. "Explain to me," he said, his voice carrying the kind of calm that preceded executions, "how a dying human soldier outran 2 of our best scouts." "The chemicals, sir," his science officer, a thin Zavanti named Crest, offered nervously. "Their medics use a cocktail of stimulants that would kill any rational species. Adrenaline, synthetic endorphins, something they call combat meth—" "I don't want their chemistry set," Vess interrupted. "I want them contained. What's the status of Operation Serenity?" "The pacifier units are ready, sir. Aerosol deployment of our most potent anesthetics, enough to drop a Thrax beast in seconds." Thess nodded slowly. "Deploy them, and bring me one of their medics, alive. I want to understand what we're fighting." 2 hours later, Rick Solon found himself the sole survivor of Operation Serenity. It had started well. The pacifier units deployed their gas across the human position, a rolling cloud of sweet-smelling oblivion. Zavanti troops advanced behind it, expecting to find unconscious humans ready for capture. Instead, they found the 77th Hellborn, having what appeared to be a party. "There's your knockout gas," one human called out, inhaling deeply. "Buddy, we have worse than this for breakfast. Hey, Doc, can we bottle some? This stuff's smooth." Vivian had actually collected samples, muttering something about field applications and recreational potential. The assault turned into a massacre. Humans fought through the gas like it was morning fog, their medics distributing counter-agents that seemed to make them enjoy it. Rix watched his unit commander, a veteran of 30 campaigns, get beaten unconscious by a human private who kept apologizing between strikes, explaining that the gas made him super huggy, but in a violent way. When the smoke cleared, Rix was on his knees, weapon discarded, hands raised in the universal gesture of surrender. A shadow fell over him. Well, well, Vivian said, studying him with interest. Nasari, right? Multiple pupils, enhanced olfactory system. Bet this gas hit you hard. Rix nodded, trying not to whimper. Up close she was terrifying in an entirely different way. Not because she looked like a killer, but because she looked like someone who'd stuff your organs back inside you with one hand while eating a sandwich with the other. Please, he managed. I surrender. I have information. Vivian interrupted. We don't do the whole prisoner thing. Too much paperwork. She pulled out a syringe. Welcome to the 77th. Fresh meat? This is gonna sting. Wait, what? The needle went in. The world exploded into colors that had flavors and sounds that had textures. Rix's last coherent thought was that his mother had been right. He should have gone into accounting. Rix awoke to find himself in what could generously be called a medical bay if you were generous with both medical and bay. It looked more like someone had crashed a hospital into a weapons depot and decided to call it good enough. Morning, sunshine, Vivian said, not looking up from whatever horror she was performing on a human soldier's legs. How's the hangover? Rix tried to speak, coughed and tasted purple. What did you give me? Little cocktail I've been working on. Human stems don't play nice with alien physiology, so I had to get creative. You're probably seeing time sideways right now. That's normal-ish. You're experimenting on me. Nah, experimenting sounds unethical. I'm aggressively treating you. There's a difference, legally speaking. She finally looked at him, and her grin was worse than any weapon. Here's the deal, Bambi. Your buddy's left you behind, which means you're ours now. You can either fight with us, or... well, actually, that's your only option. We're short-staffed. I won't fight my own people. Sure you will. Morrison, show our new friend your party trick. Morrison, who should have been dead 3 times over by now, stood up from a nearby cot. With theatrical flair, he lifted his shirt to reveal the patchwork of synthetic skin, biogel, and what looked suspiciously like industrial staples holding him together. See this, Morrison said proudly. Doc says I'm 40% aftermarket parts now. I can bend in ways that violate at least 3 laws of physics. To demonstrate, he twisted his torso a full 180 degrees. Rix promptly vomited, which came out an alarming shade of blue. That's the spirit, Vivian said cheerfully. You're already fitting in. Broner's gonna love you. Lieutenant Cade Broner chose that moment to enter, and Rix immediately understood that the universe had a sense of humor, and it was cruel. Where Vivian was chaotic energy barely contained in human form, Broner was what happened when you distilled military training into something that could make sharks nervous. New recruit? Broner asked, his voice flat as a flat line. Fresh from the Nasari, Vivian confirmed. Still a little twitchy, but the drugs are taking hold. Broner studied Rix with eyes that had seen too much and decided to keep watching anyway. Can he fight? Everything can fight if you pump it full of enough go juice, Vivian said. I meant voluntarily. Oh, then no, probably not. Broner nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Put him on point for the hospital assault. Either he'll prove useful or he'll absorb bullets meant for actual soldiers. Win-win. I'm right here, Rix protested. Yes, Brona agreed. That's the problem we're discussing. The dropship malpractice was everything Rix had been taught to fear about human engineering, where Zavanti ships were clean, efficient, and followed at least basic safety protocols. The malpractice looked like it had been assembled by a committee of mad scientists who communicated solely through explosions. Don't touch that, Vivian warned as Rix reached for what looked like a seat harness. That's Morrison's emergency intestine. Don't ask. The briefing was delivered by Brona, while the ship shook like a paint mixer with psychological issues. Listen up, meat sacks. The Zavanti have turned St. Mortis Medical Complex into a fortress. Our job is to extract Dr. Abby Pastors, who had the brilliant idea of getting herself shot down behind enemy lines while carrying prototype augmentation tech. She alive? Someone asked. Technically, Broner said, which in the 77th meant anything from missing some pieces to we'll need a really good glue. The Zavanti have the place locked down, tighter than Morrison's new sphincter, Vivian added helpfully. Morrison gave a thumbs up. So we're going in hot, loud and stupid. The usual. What's my role in this suicide mission? Rix asked, surprising himself with the question. Vivian's grin could have powered small cities. You're our cultural liaison. You're gonna tell us which corridors the Zavanti won't defend because they lead to religious sites. Which doors they've certainly trapped because they're paranoid about even numbers and generally keep us from stepping on any more cultural landmines than necessary. And if I refuse, then Morrison demonstrates his new party trick, the one where he turns his elbow inside out. It's super gross. You'll love it. Rix looked at Morrison, who was already starting to bend his arm in ways that defied several gods. I'll help! Excellent survival instincts, Brona noted. You might make it after all. As Morax's Prime grew larger in the viewport, Rix wondered if his mother would be proud that he was finally making new friends, or horrified that those friends were the galaxy's most notorious combat medics. Probably both. The dropship lurched. Someone's emergency intestine fell from the ceiling, and Morrison caught it with practiced ease. 5 minutes to hell, the pilot called out cheerfully. Vivian started handing out syringes like party favors. Remember, kids, pain is just weakness leaving the body. And if too much weakness leaves, I'll just put some back in. I'm helpful like that. The 77th Hellborn cheered. Rix closed all 4 pupils and prayed to gods he was pretty sure weren't listening anymore. Welcome to human medicine, where the cure was usually worse than the disease, but at least you'd be too high to care. St. Maurice Medical Complex had been beautiful once, back when the Zavanti believed in things like patient care and sterile environments. Now it looked like someone had asked a fortress to cosplay as a hospital, and the fortress had commitment issues. Remember, Vivian whispered as they crept through the loading bay, we're going in quiet, subtle, professional. Since when do we do subtle? Morrison asked, genuinely confused. Since now, I'm trying something new. Growth mindset and all that. The subtle approach lasted exactly 43 seconds. Intruders in Sector 7! A Zavanti guard screamed before Morrison's thrown scalpel caught him in what Rix was pretty sure wasn't a standard medical procedure. New record! Someone muttered. All right, Plan B, Vivian announced, already setting up what looked like a field surgery station in the middle of the corridor. We're doing this live. Plasma fire erupted from 3 directions. The 77th responded by getting shot, getting back up, and getting increasingly annoyed about it. Doc! Private Jackson called out, dragging himself behind cover with one functioning leg. Vivian was already there, med foam and stim packs flying. What did I tell you about arterial damage, Jackson? Don't get it. And what did you do? Got it. Disappointing. She jabbed 3 syringes into his thigh in rapid succession. This is going to make you see God. If he asks about me, tell him I'm busy. Jackson's scream turned into a laugh halfway through as the cocktail hit. He stood on his ruined leg, picked up a Zavanti riot shield, and charged the enemy position while singing what sounded like an old Earth sea shanty. Rix, pressed against a wall and trying to remember how to breathe, watched the madness unfold. This is your idea of medicine. Medicine is just combat engineering for meat, Vivian explained, cauterizing a wound with her field torch while simultaneously firing her sidearm. Hold this. She handed him what looked like a human liver. Rix held it, because what else was he going to do? General Thess watched the helmet feeds from his command center, his face showing the kind of calm that preceded either meditation or murder. They're using our own medical supplies against us, Crest reported, sounding personally offended. The human medic has jury-rigged our surgical drones into... I'm not sure what to call them. Weapons, pets, combat auxiliaries. On screen, a Zavanti medical drone, designed to deliver precise amounts of anesthetic, was now strapped with explosives and chasing Zavanti soldiers while beeping cheerfully. How? Thess asked simply. She apparently reprogrammed it to think everyone except humans register as having critically low stimulant levels. It's trying to help aggressively. And they're wounded. Keep getting back up, sir. We've confirmed kills on several humans multiple times. Their medic just fixes them. One soldier has technically died 3 times in the last hour. That's impossible. That's what he said, sir, while actively dying again. Thessa's facial ridges tightened. A Zavanti equivalent of a migraine. Show me the Nasari deserter. The screen switched to Rix's helmet cam. The young private was in the thick of it, still holding what appeared to be an organ while human medics performed surgery around him like the galaxy's most disturbing ballet. He's helping them, Thess observed. The medic injected him with something, sir. His bio readings are unusual. Heart rate says he should be in cardiac arrest, but brain activity suggests he's experiencing some form of euphoria. Of course he is. Thess turned to his tactical staff. Pull back to the inner sanctum. Let them advance. Sir? If we can't stop them in the corridors, we'll stop them at the source. Prepare the sterilization protocols. You're doing great! Vivian shouted over the sound of automatic weapons fire and Morrison's enthusiastic screaming. Real natural-born organ holder. Rix, who had never wanted to be good at holding organs, tried to focus on not dying. This was complicated by the fact that his body couldn't decide if it was terrified or having the time of its life. The human stimulants were doing things to his Nasari physiology. That would probably make fascinating medical papers, assuming he survived to be studied. Is that supposed to be outside the body? He asked, pointing at something purple and pulsing that had just fallen out of Corporal Davies. Nope, Vivian said cheerfully, scooping it up and shoving it back in with the casual air of someone returning a dropped groceries. Davies, I swear, if you don't keep your spleen inside you where it belongs. Sorry, Doc. Davies gasped, then giggled, as she spot-welded his chest cavity shut. It tickles! That's the nerve damage, Vivian assured him. Probably temporary. They'd pushed deep into the complex now, leaving a trail of bewildered Zavanti forces and repurposed medical equipment. Every sterile corridor had been transformed into a monument to human medical madness. "Why do you do this?" Rix found himself asking as they paused between firefights. "This butchery." Vivian looked at him, and for a moment the manic energy dimmed. "Because the alternative is letting them die clean. You know what your people don't get? Death isn't the enemy. Giving up is. Every soldier I patch up, every walking catastrophe I send back into the fight. They're proof that humans don't stop. We just get angrier and less symmetrical." "That's insane." "That's Tuesday." The moment passed, and a grin returned. "Besides, look at Jackson. He's having a great time." Jackson was indeed having a great time, if your definition included using his own severed foot as an improvised weapon while hopping on his medphone prosthetic. "Contact front." Broner's voice cut through the chaos. "Big boys coming out to play." The Zavanti had deployed their elite units, 7-foot-tall warriors in powered armor that could shrug off plasma fire like rain. They advanced in perfect formation, a wall of ceramic and death. "Finally," Morrison said, cracking his neck in ways that made Rix's spine hurt in sympathy. "A real fight." "Morrison, no!" Vivian started, but he was already charging, laughing that pharmaceutical laugh that had become the 77th war cry. The first elite swung a powerful maul that should have turned Morrison into paste. Instead, Morrison bent. That impossible, joint-defying bend. And the maul passed through where his torso should have been, while twisted like a pretzel. He jammed a stim pack into the gap in the elite's armor. "Share the love," he screamed. The elite stumbled, its perfect discipline cracking, as human combat drugs flooded its system. It looked at its hands like it had never seen them before, then started giggling, a sound that should not come from 7 feet of murder. "Did he just—" Rick started. "Yep," Vivian confirmed. "Weaponized medical care. I'm so proud." The battle devolved into chaos. Elites designed for orderly combat found themselves facing humans who treated physics as a suggestion and pain as foreplay. Vivian turned their formation into a surgical theater, using their own wounded as improvised barricades while she worked. "You," she pointed at Rix, "make yourself useful. That elite Morrison dosed is about to have a real bad time when Savannah physiology meets human stems. I need you to talk him through it." "Talk him through what?" "I don't know. Whatever you people do for therapy. His brain's about to realize it can taste colors. He's gonna need a friend." And that's how Rix found himself trying to counsel a 7-foot-tall killing machine through its first acid trip while a battle raged around them. "The walls are breathing," the elite whispered, its voice module glitching between frequencies. "That's normal," Rix lied, remembering Vivian's earlier words. "Just go with it." "I can see my past and future simultaneously. They're both disappearing." "That's probably also normal." "I want to call my brood mother." "Maybe after the battle?" They found Dr. Pastors in what used to be the complex's primary surgical suite, now converted into something between a throne room and a mad scientist's lab. She was technically alive, though technically was doing a lot of heavy breathing. "Took you long enough." Pastors wheezed through what remained of her lungs. Half her body had been replaced with prototype augmentations. Not the clean, surgical kind the Zavanti preferred, but brutal human engineering held together by determination and spite. "Doc Pastors!" Vivian rushed forward, already pulling out her tools. "What did they do to you?" "What didn't they do?" Pastors laughed, a sound like grinding gears. They tried to study our medical practices. I may have given them a hands-on demonstration. That's when Rix noticed the Zavanti researchers in the corner, cowering behind overturned equipment. They looked like they'd seen the face of madness, and it had winked at them. "She volunteered for augmentation," one whispered. "While conscious, without anesthetic, she said she wanted to feel the science." "That's my girl," Vivian said proudly. "Can you move?" "Can I move?" Poster stood, servos whining, flesh merging seamlessly with machinery in ways that made Rix's enhanced senses scream. "I can dance. Want to see?" "Maybe later. We need a—" The lights cut out. Emergency red bathed everything in bloodlight, and General Thess's voice echoed through the complex. "Humans, you have proven educational, but this ends now. Sterilization protocols are active. In 5 minutes, this entire complex will be reduced to constituent atoms. Die with what dignity your species can muster." "Well," Brona said calmly, "that's inconvenient."
5 minutes, Morrison asked. "That's like what? 3 surgeries?"
"4 if I hurry," Vivian agreed. "All right, people. We're doing this the stupid way. Pastors, how much of you is replaceable?" "About 60%. Why?" "Because we're gonna turn you into a battering ram. Rix, you're navigating. Those pretty eyes of yours can see through walls, right?" "Partially, but—" "Great! Morrison, you're the distraction."
"I'm always the distraction."
"And you're so good at it. Everyone else, we're punching through to the hangar. If you die, walk it off. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, we'll duct tape you to someone who can. Move!" What followed was 5 minutes of condensed insanity that would later be studied by military academians, who really should have known better. Morrison, true to form, became a one-man psychological warfare unit. He broadcast his vitals on open channels, letting every Zavanti in the complex know that he was operating with a blood pressure that should have made his head explode, a heart rate that defied mathematics, and serotonin levels that suggested he'd achieved enlightenment through violence. Pastors, augmented and angry, proved that human engineering philosophy, make it work, make it fast, make it terrifying, had applications in combat. She punched through walls like they were suggestions, her augmented limbs learning and adapting with each impact. Vivian performed no less than 17 field surgeries while moving, including one memorable moment where she reattached Jackson's arm, while he was using it as a club, and Rix. Poor Rix guided them through the complex while his Nasari senses were assaulted by stimulants that made everything taste like purple and sound like yesterday. "Left here," he shouted, his multiple pupils spinning independently. "No, wait, that's a wall." "Not anymore," Posters declared, going through it like tissue paper. They burst into the hangar with 30 seconds to spare. The malpractice sat waiting, engines hot, pilot grinning like this was the best day of his life. "All aboard the meat wagon," Vivian yelled. They piled in, a mass of augmented flesh, jury-rigged prosthetics, and enough combat drugs to kill a small moon. Rix found himself wedged between Morrison, who was somehow bending the wrong way, and the elite they dosed, who was now writing poetry about the nature of existence. "Everyone accounted for?" Brona asked. "Define everyone and accounted for," Vivian replied, still stitching something that might have been someone's something. "Good enough. Punch it." The malpractice lived up to its name, launching with all the grace of a brick thrown by someone who'd been thrown bricks at. Behind them, St. Maurice Medical Complex began to glow. "So," Poster said conversationally as they cleared the blast radius, "who wants to see what happens when I overclock these augments?" "No!" everyone shouted in unison. Too late. She flexed, and somehow made the dropship go faster through sheer force of augmented will. The complex detonated behind them, a flower of atomic fire that would have been beautiful if it wasn't trying to kill them. The shockwave caught the malpractice, sending it tumbling through space like a dropped pill bottle. "This is fine," Vivian announced, administering emergency stims to anyone within reach. "If we die, we die medicated." Rix closed all 4 pupils and wondered if his mother would have believed any of this. Probably not. He wasn't sure he believed it, and he was living it. The dropship stabilized. Barely. In the distance, Morax's Prime waited, still burning, still fighting, still refusing to make sense. "So," Morrison said into the sudden calm, "who wants to see my new trick? I can dislocate my consciousness." "That's a concussion," Vivian informed him. "Oh, that's less fun." Rix looked around at the ship full of impossibilities. Humans who should be dead. Augments that should be fiction. Medical practices that should be war crimes. And felt something he hadn't expected. He felt like he belonged. "Hey, Doc," he said, surprising himself. "What happens when the stims wear off?" Vivian's grin was answer enough. "That's the best part. They don't. Welcome to the 77th, kid. You're one of us now." Through the viewports, the Zavanti fleet was already pulling back, their organized retreat speaking volumes about what they'd learned. The humans were coming, and they brought medkits. The briefing room aboard the command ship, Do No Harm. The 77th's idea of irony looked like someone had tried to organize chaos and given up halfway through. Maps covered in injection points, medical supplies repurposed as tactical gear, and Morrison's emergency skeleton hanging in the corner for reasons no one questioned anymore. "All right, children," Broner began, his tone suggesting this was perfectly normal. "The Zavanti have deployed their new toy, an orbital bombardment platform that makes nukes look like firecrackers. They're planning to glass the entire sector." "Rude?" someone muttered. "Our response," Broner continued, "we're going to storm their command center." Silence. Then Morrison raised his hand. "Sir, that's where all their guns are." "Correct." "And their entire fleet." "Also correct." "And we're going in. How?" Vivian stood, grinning like she just discovered a new way to violate the Geneva Conventions. "Operation Reclamation. We're gonna load up every half-dead, stemmed-up, walking wounded berserker we've got, and launch them at the enemy like the galaxy's angriest torpedo." "That's insane," Posters observed. "That's Tuesday," Vivian countered. "Rix, you're our cultural advisor. Tell me, what's the Zavanti's biggest psychological weakness?" Rix, who'd stopped questioning his life choices around the time Morrison had showed him how to dislocate his own spine for tactical advantage, thought carefully. They fear disorder, chaos. The entire military doctrine is built on predictable patterns and... He stopped, understanding dawning. "You're going to break their minds." "Bingo! They won't understand human combat medicine. We're gonna give them a master class." The next 12 hours were a pharmaceutical fever dream. Every wounded soldier who could still hold a weapon, or could be duct-taped to one, was loaded with enough stims to make their previous doses look like vitamins. "Remember," Vivian announced to the assembled casualties, "you're not just soldiers. You're proof that humans are too stupid to die and too angry to care. Morrison, show them the thing." Morrison obligingly twisted his entire torso 360 degrees while maintaining eye contact. Several new recruits promptly threw up. "Beautiful." Vivian wiped away a fake tear. "Gets me every time." Rix found himself helping with the preparations, his 4 pupils now permanently dilated from residual stimulants. He'd stopped trying to make sense of human medicine and started embracing the madness. "Hey, Rix," Jackson called out. waving with an arm that was definitely not the one he'd been born with. "Check this out." He flexed, and hidden compartments in his prosthetic opened to reveal more syringes. "Doc made me a walk-in medical cabinet." "That's terrifying." "Thanks! Want to see what happens when I inject them all at once?" "Please don't." "Too late." What followed was Jackson achieving what could only be described as pharmaceutical apotheosis. He didn't just move fast. He moved in ways that suggested time was more of a gentle recommendation. "I can see forever," he announced, then promptly ran through a wall. "He'll be fine," Vivian assured Rex. "Probably. Maybe. Actually, follow him and make sure he doesn't achieve actual omniscience. We had that happen once. Very awkward." The assault began with the malpractice broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention, Zavani forces," Vivian's voice rang out, somehow managing to sound both professional and completely unhinged. "This is Sergeant Vivian Stitch Malloy of the 77th Hellborn Medical Unit. We're here to discuss your extended warranty. Specifically, how we're about to void it." The dropship punched through the defensive screen like a needle through skin, appropriate given its payload. Inside, 57 impossible soldiers waited, each one a testament to humanity's refusal to read the manual on dying properly. "Remember," Broner said as they breached the hull, "you're already dead. Everything else is just footnotes." They exploded into the command center like a pharmaceutical hurricane. Zavanti forces trained for every form of warfare except this simply stopped processing what they were seeing. Morrison, now operating with 4 different types of combat drugs in his system, had achieved a state of existence that defied physics. He moved through enemies like they were standing still, which from his perspective they might have been. Pasta's augmentations had evolved mid-fight. Her limbs now responded to thought before she had it, creating a warrior who fought in the past, present, and future simultaneously. Jackson had indeed achieved something close to omniscience, though he mostly used it to predict where enemies would be, so he could arrive there first and confuse them. And in the middle of it all, Vivian worked. Not fighting, that was for soldiers. She was there to ensure no one stayed down. A fallen human got back up. A fallen human who should be in pieces got back up faster. One soldier who technically been decapitated was reattached mid-battle with medical foam and spite. "What are they?" a Zavanti commander screamed. "They're human," another replied. "Their medic is—" "Oh God, she's looking at me!" Vivian waved cheerfully, then shot him with a syringe gun loaded with human adrenaline. The commander's eyes went wide, then wider. Then he started laughing. That broken, beautiful sound of a mind realizing everything it knew was wrong. But the real moment, the one that would echo through galactic history, came when they reached the command bridge. General Thess Valcor stood in his command center, watching his perfectly ordered military machine crumble before humans who should have been corpses 3 times over. His facial ridges had gone pale, the Zavanti equivalent of shock. "Status report," he demanded. "They're everywhere, sir. That medic, she's—" The officer paused, struggling for words. "She's reviving soldiers mid-combat. One human has died 17 times and keeps getting angry about it." On the main screen, helmet footage showed Vivian in her element. A Zavanti soldier just put 3 plasma bolts through a human's chest. Textbook killing shots. Vivian slid in, slapped some gel on the wounds, injected something that glowed, and kicked the soldier in the chest. "Breathe, you dramatic bastard!" The human gasped, sat up, and immediately headbutted the Zavanti who'd shot him. "Thanks, Doc. Stop dying. It's paperwork I don't want to do." Thess watched his forces retreat from a medic. Not a warrior, not a weapons specialist, a medic with a field kit and a bad attitude. "Sir," Crest whispered, They're at the door. The blast doors, rated to withstand direct nuclear impact, lasted exactly 13 seconds. Not because of explosives or cutting tools, but because pastors had decided they were in her way, and she took that personally. The 77th poured in like a tide of medical impossibilities. Thess found himself facing Vivian Malloy herself, her uniform splattered with blood, medical gel, and what might have been breakfast. "General," she said pleasantly. "Nice place. Bit too clean for my taste."
"What are you?"
Thess asked, his voice barely steady. "I'm a combat medic," Vivian replied. "I took an oath to do no harm. Unfortunately, I'm very bad at following instructions."
"You're monsters."
"No," Rick said, stepping forward. The Nasari deserter looked like he'd been through hell and decided to get a timeshare. "They're human. I've been with them for days now. You want to know what makes them terrifying? It's not the drugs or the augmentations or the refusal to die."
"Then what?"
Thess demanded. "They care," Rick said simply. "Every impossible surgery, every berserker they create, it's because they refuse to let their people go. They'll break every law of nature before they'll break that promise." Vivian nodded approvingly. "Kid learns fast. Now, General, here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off your bombardment. You're going to withdraw from this system. And you're going to update your military doctrine with one simple rule."
"Which is?"
Morrison, who'd been quietly dislocating joints in the background for intimidation purposes, leaned in.
"If you see a human with a medkit, run."
The footage went viral across the Galactic net within hours. Every military force, every mercenary group, every two-bit pirate crew watched the same scene. Vivian Stitch Malloy, surrounded by soldiers who defied medical explanation, calmly performing field surgery while under fire. The patient, missing several important pieces, sits up mid-procedure, grabs a weapon, and charges back into battle. Vivian doesn't even look up, just calls after them. "You're due back in 10 minutes for your follow-up." The psychological impact was immediate. Zavanti forces across 3 systems reported mass desertions when human medical units were spotted. Other species started updating their combat manuals with a new section: "Human medical personnel, avoid at all costs." But the real victory came in the aftermath, as Rix, now permanently part of the 77th, helped Vivian catalog their medical supplies. "You know what the funny part is?" Vivian said, organizing syringes like a normal person might organize ammunition. "Half of what we do is just positive thinking, and enough drugs to make the body forget it's supposed to be dead." "That can't be all of it," Rix protested. "Oh, there's technique too. Knowing which organs are optional, which bones are just suggestions, how much blood is enough versus plenty. But mostly," she grinned, "mostly it's just refusing to accept the universe's bullshit. Opinion about morality." "That's insane." "That's human." Morrison wandered by, joints bending in directions that hurt to watch.
"Hey, Doc. I think my skeleton's on backwards again."
"Third time this week," Vivian sighed. "All right, lie down. This is gonna hurt."
"Promise?"
"You beautiful disaster, yes." As Vivian went to work, turning Morrison's skeleton the right way around with the casual air of someone adjusting furniture, Rix reflected on his new life. He joined the 77th as a prisoner, stayed as a patient, and now... "Hey," Jackson called out, his augmented arm whirring. "Want to see something cool? I can launch syringes from my fingers now." "Why?" Rix asked, though he was learning that why was often the wrong question with humans. "Why not?" And really, that summed up human combat medicine perfectly. Not can we or should we, but why not? The Savanti Empire would recover from their military defeat. They'd rebuild their fleets, retrain their soldiers, develop new strategies, but they'd never recover from the psychological wound the 77th had inflicted. The knowledge that somewhere out there, human medics were turning casualties into weapons, and death into a temporary convenience. The news of anti-military doctrine was simple, distributed to every soldier, printed in every manual. Upon confirmation of human medical personnel in any combat zone, immediate tactical withdrawal is not just recommended, but mandatory. Do not engage. Do not observe. Run. They do not save lives. They weaponize them. The bar on Nexus Station was the kind of place where species mingled, deals were made, and everyone pretended not to notice the probably illegal activities happening in the corners. Rick sat at a table with Vivian, Morrison, Jackson, and Pastors, watching various aliens give them a wide berth. "You know what I miss?" Morrison said, somehow drinking through a straw that went through his neck and out his ear. "The early days when people just thought we were crazy. Now they know we're crazy," Jackson added cheerfully, his augmented fingers drumming patterns that would have broken normal bones. "Speaking of crazy," Pastor said, her augmentations humming softly, "I've been working on something new. What if we could make the stims contagious?" "No," everyone said in unison. "You people have no vision." Vivian raised her glass, filled with something that glowed and probably violated several health codes. "To the 77th, to the walking wounded, to the too stupid to die and too angry to care." "To emergency intestines," Morrison added. "To perpetual chemical enhancement," from Jackson. "To augmentations that shouldn't work but do," Pastors chimed in. Rix raised his own glass, his 4 pupils focusing with difficulty. 6 months ago he'd been a proper soldier in a proper military. Now he was drinking with mad geniuses who turned medical malpractice into an art form. "To running toward medics instead of away from them," he said. They drank. Across the bar a Zavanti merchant, who'd been eyeing them nervously, suddenly stood and left, apparently remembering urgent business elsewhere. "Still got it," Vivian said proudly. "Hey," Morrison said suddenly. "Want to see my new trick? I figured out how to store extra organs." "Morrison, no." "Morrison, yes." As Morrison began demonstrating something that definitely violated several laws of nature, Rick smiled. The galaxy had learned to fear human combat medics, and rightfully so, but they'd never understand the real secret, that behind every impossible revival and pharmaceutical miracle was a simple, stubborn refusal to let their people fall. Well, that and enough drugs to kill a small moon. But mostly the first thing, probably. "Doc," Morrison yelled, "I think I started wrong." Vivian sighed, already reaching for a field kit. "This is why we can't have nice things. Or normal organs. All right, everybody stand back. This is gonna get messy." Just another night for the 77th Hellborn Medical Unit, where the only thing more dangerous than dying was being saved. In the distance a siren wailed, not for them, but probably because of them. "Tuesday?" Jackson asked. "Feels like a Tuesday," Vivian agreed, elbow deep in Morrison's experimental organ storage. Rix laughed, the sound carrying across the bar and making several more patrons remember urgent appointments. He was home.